Welcome to Unit 2, Lesson 1.11. There's a little asterisk up there because technically this lesson came from the Unit 1 materials, but it makes more sense for it to be in Lesson 2. So we're at 1.11, and then you'll be moving back to 2.5 in the Unit 2 materials after this one. This lesson is all about just making sure you're familiar with your operation clue words. So I want you to pause the video really quick, and somewhere on your notes page, you can do a blank piece of paper inside your notebook if you want, or on the cover page of your actual notes paper. I want you to draw a chart like I've got drawn here on the screen. And then after you finish drawing your chart, continue playing the video because we're going to fill this in with some actual clue words about addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So pause now, draw your chart, and then play to fill in the chart. All right, so first we've got four main words or phrases to look for that mean addition. The first one, of course, is the most obvious one, and that is sum. Sum is the answer to an addition problem. Then we, of course, we know that a plus sign means to add, so plus. And then we have the word increase. Increase is often used in like real world context problems. And then we have more than. More than is also sometimes, instead of written as more than, sometimes written as greater than. All of these are going to be clue words or phrases that would indicate you need a plus sign in your algebraic expression. Let's move on to subtraction. All right, I've got five main ones listed here for subtraction. Of course, we know that the answer to subtraction problem is known as a difference. Then whenever we read subtraction algebraically, we say the word minus for that symbol. The opposite of increase, which means to add, is to decrease. And then less than, let me pause here, put a little star next to less than. Less than is a subtraction word, but when you see less than in a problem, you need to recognize that that means you are actually flipping the order of the numbers. For example, 3 less than 5 is 5 minus 3 when you were to write that out. So for less than, make sure you flip the order of the numbers. And then subtracted from maintains that order. So 3 subtracted from 5 is, sorry, not that maintains the order, but also is one of your flip them. So 3 subtracted from 5 is not 3 minus 5, it's 5 minus 3. So these two phrases, watch out for those when it comes to subtraction. Because remember, with subtraction, the order matters or your answer will change. All right, let's move on to multiplication. Words for multiplying. All right, some main ones for multiplication. Product is the answer to a multiplication problem, so you'll see that one a lot. Anytime we see the little x or the little dot, those are your multiplication symbols. We read that as times. I'll skip over that one right there for just a second and talk about each and per. You're going to see each and per in a lot of real world context problems, like tickets are $25 each, or it costs $10 per person. Those are going to mean multiply by 25 or multiply by 10. This one here that I skipped over, 2/3 of. Now that could be any fraction. So anytime you see a fraction and then the word of, that is a clue that you are supposed to multiply by whatever that fraction is. Let's move on to division. For division, the answer to a division problem is often referred to as the quotient. Sometimes, but not often, it's referred to as the ratio of two numbers. Of course, when we see a fraction bar is how we, of x over 2, fraction bar is how we indicate division. You're also familiar with this symbol, but we don't use this symbol for division in algebra because it can just be messy. So if you see like x divided by 2 written like this as a fraction, that's how we show division algebraically. So divided by is your obvious clue for division. Okay, I put fraction of again, but I want you to notice the difference between the fractions. So Here in the multiply, the numerator is a number that is larger than 1. So you're going to multiply by that fraction. If your denominator is 1, then you're going to divide by whatever the denominator is. So if you have a numerator of 1, then just divide by the bottom number, that denominator. So in this case, if it's 1/4 of, that just means to divide by 4, whatever that bottom number is. And the last thing, notice that each and per is here again in the division column as well as it was in the multiplication column. So you have to read carefully what information you are given to know whether each or per means to multiply or if it means to divide. So add this little note to each column there. For multiplication, it's going to be given parts. So like $25 per ticket, and you have to find the total cost. If you're given the parts, you're to multiply when it says each or per. But for division, if you're given the total, for example, you spent a total of $150 at the store and you want to determine how much you spent per item. Then if you're looking for the parts and you're given the total, then you're dividing when you see each or per. So you got to be careful with those and really pay attention to the context of the problem. Last thing I want to touch on as far as setting you up for being able to interpret your problems is to watch out for these two specific phrases because they're going to indicate a distributive property situation. So if you see times the sum of or times the difference of, the times number, so it's like 3 times the sum of blah, blah, blah. That times number goes here. Times goes in the blank. And then this would be your sum or your difference. So if you see this particular phrase set up in that way, that's an indication to set up a distributive property problem. Now that you've got all of your vocabulary written down, we're going to dive into some of the questions. I'm not going to do all the questions with you because this particular lesson really requires just a lot of practice on your part to get good and comfortable with these vocabulary words. But I will reveal some of the answers as we go through this video. So at this point, we're going to move on to the first example. All right, so for these first 4 examples in exercise 1, these are just going into basic addition and subtraction and just using those clue words that we talked about just a moment ago. So in part A, it says write a calculation that represents 5 greater than a number. 5 greater than a number, we know that greater than from our vocabulary is plus, so 5 plus 3. For part B, it's 2 less than 9. Remember that less than is one of those that I told you to watch out for. It means to subtract, but you have to flip the order. So this is actually 9 minus 2. For C, we want the sum of -3 and 8. -3 is an addition word, so -3 plus 8. And then finally for part D here, difference of 20 and 12. Difference is a clue for subtraction, but it does not change the order, so that's just 20 minus 12. All right, now let's get into some actual algebraic expressions. So for part E, we've got an expression that is 10 greater than x. Greater than, we know, means to add. So 10 plus x. All right, in F, we have 5 less than n. So just like we did just a second ago, less than is that subtraction phrase, or it means to reverse the order. So it's not 5 minus n, it's going to be n minus 5. G wants the sum of y and a number 1 greater than y. Circle that word and right there. So sum is our clue, and is where the symbol goes. So anytime you see sum, difference, product, or quotient of, you need to look for the word and or with, and that's where the symbol goes. So we've got y plus, now let's go over to the next section, a number 1 greater than y. So we actually have another clue there. Greater than is another addition sign. Greater than is another addition sign. And it says 1 greater than y. So 1 plus y. So this is y plus 1 plus y. And if you wanted to put the 1 plus y in parentheses, you could, just to keep that as a group since it is grouped together in the problem. And then H, we've got the difference between a number 1 larger than n and, so difference, and, so the minus sign goes there, 1 smaller than n. So this one's pretty loaded as well. So we have one number larger than n, that's going to be 1 plus n, or larger than, and one number smaller than n. Smaller is kind of like less than, so that actually means n minus 1. In this particular case, it is necessary to group those two pieces of your difference into sets of parentheses because this difference applies to this entire set, not just the letter N. Let's look at some in exercise 2. For exercise 2, we're looking at words that mean to multiply or to divide, which we've already covered in your first set of your notes. So let's dive right in. For part A, we've got a number that is 5 times greater than 2. Careful here, we know that greater than typically means to add, but we're talking about times greater than, so that literally just means 5 times 2. When you're multiplying, you can use a dot symbol, or you could write it using a set of parentheses with them smushed together. Either one of these indicates multiplication, but don't use the letter X for multiplication in algebra because it could often be confused with the variable X. Okay, B, N is our number. It says an expression for a number that is twice N. So twice is one that we didn't actually cover in your chart, but twice is the same thing as doubling. So that's just to multiply by 2n. Quotient or ratio, we talked about that. That means to divide, of 12 and 3. So that is 12 over 3. Remember, do not use the division symbol like you're used to from elementary school. Use a fraction for division. And then finally, in this section, we've got the ratio of x to 5. Ratio is the same thing as quotient, so that is x over 5. The next section of the notes is going to take these same skills that we just practiced pretty quickly and do them in a more complex way. So I'm going to do a few of them with you, and then I'm going to have you do several on your own for practice. All right, for exercise 3, it says up here at the top that these can be tricky. So as you're looking at these that are more complex, you need to read them carefully, think about your order of operations, and then this right here says check with a real number, meaning plug in an actual number for your letter. Uh-oh. Why did that go black? Hold on, let me pause. Oh, there I am. Okay, so it says check with a real number, meaning plug in a actual number for the letter that you have in your problem and see if it works. You don't have to do that step, but if you're just wanting to be sure, you can do that. The main thing is read carefully and think about order of operations. All right, so for A, they tell you they want you to use the letter X, and they want an expression that is 3 more than twice the value of X. So 3 more than is your first thing. More than means 3 plus. And then twice the value of X, 2X. For B, N is your number, and they want an expression for 2 less than 1/4 of N. All right, so 2 less than means minus, but because it's less than, I know that the 2 goes after it. less than flips the order. And then 1/4 of n. That literally translates to this, 1/4 times n. But remember we talked about on your chart that if your top number is a 1, you could write it as n divided by 4 and then subtract 2. Either of these is acceptable. This way is a little neater and more concise than putting the fraction, but either of them is correct. C, we've got Sally's age and her father is 4 years less than, so 4 years less than means minus 4, 5 times her age referring to Sally, which they tell you is S. So 5 times S would go before your minus sign. Remember, less than is to flip. So 4 years less than means minus 4. 5 times her age, 5 times S. Next one, we've got 3 times the sum of times the sum of. Remember, we talked about that one on your chart. This is a distributive property problem. Times the sum of means I put the 3 here on the outside, and my sum goes in the parentheses. So my sum is x plus 10. For E, an expression for 7 less than. Let me pause and go ahead and write minus 7. Less than means to flip. 4 times the difference of times the difference of is another distributive property. So I'm multiplying by 4, so 4 goes on the outside. Let me make that a little bit cleaner there. Get rid of that underline. Okay. So 4 goes on the outside, and we're doing the difference of n and 5. So that is n minus 5 inside the parentheses. That one was pretty loaded, so make sure that you really go back and watch that again if that confused you the first time. 7 less than minus 7. 4 times the difference of is automatically distributive property. 4 goes on the outside. The difference of n and 5 goes on the inside of the parentheses. The last one I'm going to do with you, and then you're going to do some on your own and check them. Ratio. Ratio means to divide. So I'm going to go ahead and put a fraction bar, because remember, we're not using that division symbol. So the top is 3 less than x. Less than means minus 3, so it's going to be x minus 3. 2, ratio 2. So after the word 2, we go to the bottom. 2 more than x. More than means to add, so 2 plus x. Okay, that is most of what I'm going to be doing with you in this video as far as helping you on this. So hopefully you've gotten some good help and you have a good basic understanding. And now it's time for you to pause this video and try the next 4 on your own. Answers will be revealed on the next slide, so pause the video, don't wait, and then just copy down what I put on the answers. You need to practice this so that you can get good at it and be successful on your own. So pause the video, try exercise 3, G through J, and then push play to check your answers. All right, you better have paused the video and worked these out on your own, but let's check your answers. So here are the final answers for each of those 4 that you just did. How did you do? If you missed any of these and you're confused about why, after you take some time to really look at what I've underlined and circled and analyze my answers, please make sure that you talk to me, or if we have another person in the room to help out, another person who's already done this lesson, talk to someone. Make sure that you really make sure you understand this before you move on, because this is the kind of the meat of the lesson, is these really complex phrases and being able to break them down. Let's move on to the next section. All right, this is your challenge zone. Exercise 4. You're going to fill out the chart. first by picking a number. I will get you started just to make sure you understand how to do it. So it wants you to pick numbers, assign numbers to X, and then fill out this chart. What you're looking for as you do this is an algebraic pattern. So over here, you're going to write an algebraic expression for what you see happening in the table, not using numbers, but using algebraic terms and expressions. So let's just get started. I'll fill out the top line with you and then you complete the table on your own. So we're going to pick a random number for X. Let's say X is 4. So if X is 4, 1 less than 4 is 3. 1 more than 4 is 5. Sum is referring to these two numbers. So we're going to add those two numbers together. 3 plus 5 is 8. All right, so you pick 3 new numbers, do 1 less, 1 more, and then add those together. See if you can determine a pattern for what's happening on the table, and then write an algebraic explanation for that. All right, you should be all done with your notes for lesson 1.11. Make sure you see the teacher to get your answer key and check over the things that I didn't discuss in the video. If you have any questions, make sure you address those, but you are now ready to move on to lesson 1.11, practice with translating English into algebra.